All right. Welcome back to another lovely episode of Politics and Movies. And we've got friends. Today we're joined by Billy.
Yeah, I'm multiple people today.
Yeah. And today we're going to be talking about the hit 1988 classic Die Hard, American action film directed by John McTiernan and written by Jeb Stewart and Steven D'Souza and starring uh, Bruce Willis and Alan Rickman. This is this is the fun one. I've seen this movie many times, but there's definitely a lot of political readings we could get into. Do you have anything right off the bat, Billy? Anything obvious?
Yeah, honestly, there's a lot of cheeky, obvious stuff for this movie. Um, to just read right off the bat. This is a movie we've seen so many times that we basically both know it by memory. It's a Christmas classic for us. Um, but for me, whenever I think of political commentary for this movie, I immediately think of the line, the policeman who becomes a hero. His line that says he accidentally shot a kid.
He
He had a
specifically
toy
says
gun. Looked real
he
enough.
specifically says he had a ray gun. It looked real enough. Like what? A ray gun? What is? What was he? An alien? What? Come on.
like I that definitely is intended to just kind of be it's a a sad moment for sure, but it's just such a silly comment that I feel like you are supposed to be like, what? How did it look real enough?
Yeah, and that definitely some commentary on how jumpy police officers can be when they, see like anyone with anything that remotely resembles a gun. Like, uh, it reminds me of the time there was a cop that shot a guy because he thought he had a grenade in his hand. He was eating a pear.
Yeah. Yeah, I know there was another shooting either this year, no, not this year, but there was a kid with his science project, and it was like definitely very racially motivated. Um and I think it's interesting too that this is you know, this is a black cop who shot. I don't. Do we know the race of the kid? I
No.
don't think we actually do. Yeah, but I do think it's interesting that you know, he shot a kid, and his excuse is the gun looked real enough, and it's like all the evidence is kind of stacked against him because it's just okay. First of all, you see a kid, you should not have your finger on the trigger ever when you are just seeing a kid, and then the kid pulls out a ray gun, and your first instinct is just, oh shit, I'm not gonna talk him down, I'm just gonna fucking kill this kid. But I mean, I do it does just, again, I know I've talked about it every time, but say a lot about training and being ready for those tense situations. And I mean, I understand when you're approached with a life and death situation, you have a instinctual urge to protect yourself. But it's just a shame that you have a weapon that can take a life so easily. So if you make a mistake, that really is just a life altering mistake for the person who you're taking their life. Like that kid might have not even known that like their life was about to end if they pulled out the ray gun. They might have just been showing him a ray gun and like saying, "Oh, here's my toy." We don't really know the situation, and we don't really know if it was like racially motivated or if he just like was in a bad neighborhood or what, but it's all possible, and it's just a sad situation in reality that someone's life can be taken that fast just because of a
Yeah,
mistake.
yeah, that's true. And it's just it's interesting commentary to, like in an action comedy movie, to just there's a lot of stuff in this movie that is kind of like that. Honestly, the satirization of the FBI in this movie, I think, is great. Like they're just played for laughs throughout because of how inept they're depicted, I think. Um like many of the villains say throughout
Yeah,
the film, they're just following the playbook. They're not applying any kind of specifics to this situation. They're not tailoring their process at all to fit this specific situation. They're just going through for the cookie cutter approach to perceived, quote unquote terrorist. Yeah, because they're assuming throughout the film that
oh
these are
yeah, yeah,
just terrorists that have hijacked the building, because which makes sense, but they before they have any specifics or any like real information, they just like, oh, we're gonna sweat them out, we're gonna turn off the power, and that's exactly um what the thieves want, so to access the safe, so it's like they're unwittingly like leading right into their plan, when if they had like actually assessed the situation in any meaningful way, they might have figured out that, like, that's their approach was all wrong. What, like, what could they have done? I don't know. I'm not a law enforcement expert.
yeah. Uh, I think it's very telling also in the initial conversation too between the FBI head guy and Hans. It's such a stiff playbook conversation, like he goes in, like you're saying, goes in assuming the demands are like a terrorist organization demands, and Hans like plays into that. He eats it up. He's laughing like as if you're like pranking as if you're pranking a Papa John's or something. He's laughing with his buds on the phone and just having a good time, and he, he's getting exactly what he wants by just delaying everything because the FBI is just underestimating him
Yes.
fully.
Yeah, it's true. Like um, they're giddy like teenagers that are they're like Bart calling Moe's Tavern and asking for a silly name. Is there a humongous here?
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny because they're not the only ones who underestimate Hans. Like uh, obviously, what's his name?
Who?
Tamayachi? Is that his name? Tamayachi, the owner of the
Takagi.
organization who who
Oh my
dies.
god.
The
Is
the
it
guy. Oh
Tamagotchi?
my bad. Well, it's I almost said
Does he have Neopets?
Tamagotchi. How racist can I get on a scale of 1 to 10? But he takes it seriously. Not. He's definitely not taking the demands of the terrorists. And he, sticks it out, and he knows he's gonna die, and he does die. Um, but that business guy who's
Ellis.
definitely a joke. Um,
Yeah.
he goes in thinking it's just a business deal. He thinks that he can sell them and that it's just gonna be
Right.
okay, and that this is just another business deal, and um, that he knows what they want and he can get it for them, and he's gonna help, quell their demands, and then everybody can go home safely. Um, but obviously, he's in over his fucking
Right.
head, and he gets
Yeah,
killed.
he like most characters in this movie that aren't you know, John McClane, he completely misreads the situation, and yeah, he thinks these are just, like terrorists to be negotiated with, like, like the cops, like the FBI, and yeah, he doesn't have the full picture, and the only one who seems to be genre savvy in this movie is, Bruce Willis's character, John McClane. And also, I guess Al too. Al, is has a good head on his shoulders, and he figures stuff out. The cop, Al Powell.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I, I I do think it says a little bit about um taking a situation and playing it by ear based off of your experience, and not
Yeah,
just based off of the playbook. Like you said, just not taking things as face value from your training, and just trying to base it off of your experience. And if you don't have the experience, then listening to others' experience, because um, obviously, the FBI agent has plenty of opportunities to be informed by John McClane. He doesn't listen to him. He's informed by the cop, but he still doesn't listen to him. He instead threatens the cop and just like doesn't want to hear him talk, and tells him he wants him to leave instead. But it's just like he had plenty of he could have de-escalated the situation, but instead John McClane
yeah,
has to deal with a fucking helicopter that's actually shooting at him, and he has to de-escalate the situation himself by like extraordinary means. He has to shoot at in the sky in order to get everybody to leave. And it's just him. I think what's really fun about this movie is just it uses like a classical misunderstanding of everything to great effect, and it's very always plot relevant, and it's always like
yeah.
John McClane is a fucking underdog against the world, you
Yeah, and
know?
that I guess that'll be a trend in the rest of the movies, but that's neither here nor there. But in this one specifically, yeah, he pretty
Yeah.
much, and that's a good like screenwriting trick where he has to like pretty much take on the villains by himself with like minimal assistance, and it ends up being on him at the end of the day. And he gets blamed for being sort of a brash, like hot-headed cop who doesn't play by the rules, to an extent. That's the trope anyway that gets played with in this film. And yeah, he gets threatened like on multiple occasions throughout the film, by the the chief of police, Dwayne Robinson, and he gets threatened by the FBI. And like they assume that he's insane, or he's a bartender. At one point they call him, he could be a fucking bartender for all you know. Yeah.
There's so many
Or
iconic lines.
and
You could be a fucking bartender. A
a bartender
bartender.
that's taking down several terrorists. Yeah. The most skilled bartender of all time. No, but and at one point, even the emergency line that he calls for help doesn't believe him, and and then that leads to the other iconic line, "Jesus Christ, lady, does it sound like I'm ordering a fucking pizza?"
Yeah, yeah.
And then he thinks help is on the way, and then the emergency vehicles end up going in a different direction, and he has to get the cops' attention by throwing a corpse out a window. And that's the only way that the cops get involved. He has to take drastic measures.
It's very funny because almost everybody in this movie is not taking the situation with the seriousness that it entails. Like, the only people who are taking it seriously are most of the hostages and obviously John McClane and the cop. Everybody else fumbles the bag seriously, and like all these examples, and then like I forgot about the whole like dynamic with the reporters too. Like they're the reason that they think they're like helping in some way by making it a sensational story, but it's their like sensationalism that causes the relationship
Holly Gennaro.
between John McClane
Holly McClane.
and what's her name?
Yeah. To
Yeah, Holly
they
Gennaro to be
inadvertently give more
known.
information to the bad guy. Yeah, and then he ends up holding her hostage and using it against her. Both of them.
It's honestly a interesting like political message of taking terrorism seriously, but not just thinking of it as terrorist, like as a terrorist act. Because it's so easy to other it and think like these aren't people; these are just terrorists who just want their comrades, or they want like some silly purpose, but they dehumanize them, and they think that there's some political agenda, but really these are people. Really they want something, and obviously they use
Yeah.
that to their advantage, and they just wanted money. Like they get so othered, and they get so
Dehumanized.
they prove to them, hey, you just played into our hands. Like everybody's played into their hands by thinking that they know what they want, but they didn't know what they want. um the the one business guy thinks he knows what they want, and he would have gotten John McClane killed if he got John McClane to go into their hands, and the whole situation would have been over,
Right.
and they would have gotten away scot-free. And judging by the FBI's prowess in the situation, the whole they died in the airplane crash or whatever, or they died in the building blowing up, that scheme would have definitely worked, even though it would have made no sense.
Right. And it's funny though, the FBI ends up paying for their hubris though by getting killed and in a fiery explosion because they completely misread the situation, and of course the uh the chief of police quips, I guess we're going to need more FBI guys, but they never get more FBI guys, and it turns out okay. So I guess the FBI is completely redundant and unnecessary in this situation. That's what the screenwriters are telling us.
Yeah, and I could definitely see that. It's funny because by um by acting so drastically, their measures that they take. The one guy in the
Yeah,
helicopter,
like fucking
he
Saigon.
says this is just like Nam. He's gonna like fucking moan out everybody. And then they send in fucking tanks and everything. Like they're just so unprepared for this level of
Well,
tactical, warfare.
yeah, I was gonna say,
And
well, that could
they just
that leads me to an
go ahead.
interesting point. Could this be an allegory for like the Vietnam War? And how like guerrilla warfare was effectively used against this structured, rigid, approach by the U.S. government and by the U.S. Military, and they completely get sidelined by these old-fashioned guerrilla warfare tactics, just hiding out and picking people off, and like and the antidote in this movie is in the form of another guy, the good guy, doing just that same thing.
Oh yeah, I would definitely say like I was going along that line too. That I think it makes sense even with the othering aspect of not understanding who they're fighting against, and also not the sensationalism of the news, and people really also not knowing what's going on in this situation until shit hits the fan. Um, like everybody is just kind of in the dark until the end of the movie, and then a guy just plummets to his death, and this building blows up, and um, it's also a film in the '80s, so I definitely think like its allusions are a little intentional.
Yes, I definitely think that's intentional. Yeah, so how do you feel about how women are represented in this movie? To an extent,
Are women represented in this movie?
yeah,
This is such a masculine heavy movie. I just I I always have I like that Holly is trying to be her own person.
she's mocked for
I
using
don't
her maiden
like
name,
that
and she's mocked
it
for
feels like yeah. And I don't like how with the end of these movies, including like 1 and 2, it's like, oh, we have to have him kissing her at the end. We have to have him have a good relationship with her. I think these movies are at their like best theme wise when it's just like I think in the some of the later ones it explores how Bruce Willis's um his drastic measures don't translate well to a relationship, which honestly I'm not too surprised. Like he's just like on edge all the time, and I think that goes with his experience, that goes with how well trained he is with these situations, because he's not always just brute forcing himself in these fights. He's actually winning tactically. He's using the desks. He's using, um, he's using his surroundings. He uses a chain to kill someone. He's just he's honestly kind of like Batman in this movie. I'm not gonna lie. He's he's just an environmental fighter who knows how to fight, but Batman obviously doesn't use guns. I know. Um, and then he has the police shooting at him at some point. But anyway, I just think his machismo is just not a good relationship partner person. And I do like in this movie he has that moment where he talks to himself in the mirror and he's like, why did you do that? Why did you say that? And he knows he
yeah.
went into a conversation going to start the argument. Um but this movie is centered about around him, and I think just women are kind of like an afterthought. They're some of the hostages. They're just there to be um supporting the other characters. The maid is just there to, open the door for the reporter guy.
Yeah, that's fair, and yeah,
They're just
they
kind
are
of
like
there.
secondary, as is usually the case in like '80s action movies. They're secondary characters. Um, they are also eye candy. In fact, there's a
Yeah.
gratuitous flash at one point early in the movie. Yeah,
Yeah. I never understood like why that was there. It just was like such a weird like
Oh,
moment where
that
he's
that
just like,
too. The poster. Yeah,
doesn't
he
he touch
says
the poster?
girls and he touches the poster.
I forgot about the sex thing. But yeah, the girls too. It's just like, what? Why was that in there? What do you think about? And I
Okay.
know this is 1988, but I have to say it. Even the towers on the cover, it. This movie kind of just the towers just look
I
so similar to
guess.
9/11, don't they?
It's yeah, definitely a cultural coincidence that like it's a terrorist event in a tall building just a few years before the first World Trade Center incident, the bombings in 1992, and then of course September 11th happened later. Um, I mean it's interesting, but like it's not obviously it's not intentional. So it's like I don't really you know have a lot to say about that because it's not like an actual intentional reading or anything.
I will say I think this goes to show, and obviously it wasn't intentional, but I think that there was like a fear, there, and I think this movie was trying to play into that fear. Um, and there was always this fear of a terrorist action that could affect like a giant building, like in New York or in anywhere, and just how like the repercussions would actually be for the people. And I think that that's what the cover art was supposed to evoke. And so I think it's just very culturally fascinating that like that fear really did take hold eventually when 9/11 did happen. Like there was always the fear of, well, we're okay, this hasn't happened, this will never happen, but it was just in the back of people's minds. But is it possible? And then it did happen eventually. Hit a plane. This is gonna
Yeah.
hit a building, and
Yeah.
it's always possible.
So do you think that this could have like unintentionally or possibly been one of the influences for, Osama bin Laden's plan or, like, oh, maybe that's a good idea. Uh we'll target a skyscraper. What could be more American at, at
I
this
don't,
point?
I don't I don't think so. I don't think Bin Laden watched Die Hard,
Who knows?
but 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 I do think that it was on people's minds that it was possible, and it was like and it was a fear, and that also it was also just a target in general. Because I wonder how many people have just seen like the Eiffel Tower, or other landmarks, and just thought like, oh hey, what an easy target to target their nationalism and their pride.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. It just could just be a cultural osmosis thing.
What's the nationality of Hans and his group?
I they mostly speak German, so I think it's implied that they're German. Most of them at least. Of course, there's one Asian guy and there's an American black guy, Theo. But most of them are, definitely German or, like German speaking at least. Um So yeah, and they're, at one point, John says, they're mostly European, based on their clothing labels and their cigarettes, and so yeah, they're European, mostly German. I guess that one guy was Italian, the guy that got thrown out the window.
Do you think, again, another
Okay.
reach? World War II was just such a zeitgeist of a war. You know, it. I feel like after that, Germans have been portrayed in so many movies as the bad guys, and so often they are like, you know, so often World War II is used as like the crux of, oh yeah, these are Nazis, these are the bad guys. Um, they're usually portrayed as intelligent, like scientist types, who are, trying to uh, do experiments or just trying to follow through on Hitler's plan or whatever. How do you feel about like that kind of being alluded to with them being German?
Oh no, I think it's also interesting that as far as I know, none of them were actually German. Like a lot of them were like other nationalities, like just like. And I know that's common in Hollywood. Like you don't get the actual, you just get someone that can kind of do the accent. Like of course, Alan Rickman is British, and Alexander Godunov, who played one of the terrorists, is who played Carl is actually Russian. So I think it's interesting.
I
Well, there's like one of the guys was played by an actual German, and that was Wilhelm von Homburg. He was the uh, he was one of the terrorists, and he's also the guy that plays Vigo in Ghostbusters 2. Which fun fact, his accent was so bad in that movie they completely dubbed him over, and he got really upset about that. Um, and it's funny though because I think it really lends to the uncanny quality of him in that movie. So I think it was a good choice, but that's about Ghostbusters too. But yeah, so anyway, I do think like there is something to, this being a in a lot of ways an action comedy that in some ways parodies tropes of earlier action movies, and it also like embodies a lot of those tropes in a lot of ways. So yeah, it makes sense that the bad guys would be Germans mostly, because it's like a send up of those earlier movies. And like of course the famous line in this movie that directly uh references how absurd the situation is when Hans is taunting John on the radio, and he says, uh, what are you, just like another you're a cowboy, you're another misguided member of this, like bankrupt culture that thinks he's John Wayne or Rambo. And
Mhm.
I do think that's interesting that the movie directly references that, and in fact, supposedly that is like lifted from a critic's um, criticism of an earlier Stephen D'Souza film, Commando. I thought that was interesting. So it's yeah, so he's self-aware. It's a very self-aware script. It's a very well-written movie, I think. And it does, play with these tropes and these assumptions that people make about American culture and about violence that takes place in America. And I do think it's one of the reasons why this movie, resonates with so many people and is so successful, that because it just it rings true, like, this is a very, like American situation. But, like of course, and the bad guys are European, so it's like it's all You know? It does, I
I,
think in that way, it absolutely does harken back to, like, World War II, where, um, America is, perceived as, like, the big, strong, like, force for good, even though, we had plenty of allies in that war, and, a lot of their roles get downplayed. It's definitely downplayed how much Russia, like, really carried the brunt of the Allied forces, especially, um, you know, uh, when they marched through Poland and Germany, and they seized the capital, before we could get there. So, and
yeah.
I don't know if there's necessarily an aspect of that in this film, but I don't know. What do you think?
No, I definitely think that this is, like you said, it's taking from the American side of the story. It definitely would be downplaying others' roles in that in that war. And it's more of like just less of talking about the war and more of just talking about the Hollywood side of the war, like and in that way, it would make sense that there isn't, but I do think the other reason this has like resonated so far is because of how interesting like John's fight is and how interesting like his opposition is in this movie. It's really like a perfect push and pull because they're both not dumb, like John McCain is very now I'm actually saying it for real. John McClane is actually like a human. He's not just Rambo fighting through a bunch of people and killing everyone. He's, portrayed as a human who bleeds, who gets glass in his foot, who thinks of his daughters, and who says that he messed up with his wife, and he has actual regrets. It like you said, it's really poking at the Hollywoodization of an action movie and just trying to say this is still a movie, but this is like a real character. This is still fun, but this is, you know, what this situation would this is like not this is what this situation might actually look like. Because, again, like the cops are being stupid, everybody's being stupid. It's just like a realistic villain who you know, is actually being smart and actually putting his plan in fruition in a very clever way.
Yeah,
Um,
and
he,
there definitely is a little
y-
bit of like Hollywoodization of it, though. There's definitely stuff that John McClane survives that a normal human wouldn't, like certain explosions in the
oh
film,
yeah,
and getting shot at multiple times by, like certain, automatic weapons, that a normal, real person probably would have gotten hit by, at least.
yeah. But my favorite scenes in the movie are when he survives um because of his ingenuity, or like he is up against Hans, and they're both like showing that they're not dumb. Like there's that scene where Hans tells the other guy to shoot the glass, and that fucks up with John McClane's feet, and like he's reeling from that for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
There there's the
Yeah.
there's the scene where they meet each other, and Hans is, without a gun. He's just trying to play it cool and use his American accent, his fake American accent, so that John McClane doesn't find him out and then kill
Yeah.
him. Uh, and they're both just like in each other's head, and it's such a fun scene. And it's just like, oh, John McClane gave him a gun without bullets, and oh, he's looking at the names of the people inside the building, and he creates a fake name, or he uses one of the names hoping that John McClane actually doesn't work there, and he's just um someone who came outside, which makes sense to him because they didn't plan for him. They had everything ready, but they didn't know about him. Um and there's just so many scenes in this movie where they're just going back and forth. Like, they're for sure there's the Hollywoodization of things, but the in an actual terrorist situation, there's people who fuck up, and then there's people who stand up to resolve the situation and resolve it the right way.
Right. It's definitely a little more grounded in certain ways. Yeah, like you were saying. There's definitely some realism involved. But it's very well done. There's a lot to humanize John McClane and not show he's like a Arnold Schwarzenegger type that can take, like tons of beatings. He's just a normal guy at the end of the day. He's your average Joe cop, and I think that's part of the appeal of this movie, is that he's supposed to be,
For
yeah,
sure.
just this normal guy that happens to be stuck in this impossible situation, and he uses his brains and his brawn to overcome it equally. Um, and yeah, on the flip side of that, there's Hans Gruber, who is doing pretty much the same thing. But he's definitely more of um, a criminal mastermind. He uses his brains more. And he does get physically overpowered. Well, I guess at the end of the movie. Um, but up until then, there's no situation in which he has to like grapple or anything. But John McClane physically overpowers a lot of the other terrorists. And yeah, so I do think it's very well done, very well balanced.
It definitely does the action and satire elements like really well.
Yeah. All right. Was there anything else you wanted to say before we wrap up?
Um, I'm thinking of what else I could even possibly say. I feel like we I feel like we touched on everything I would have wanted to. You should text Leandra and say, is there anything we should have
Yeah.
said?
I don't think for this movie there's anything that she would add. I don't know though. So yeah, I guess this was our episode on Die Hard, politics and movies. I hope you guys liked it. And yeah, without further ado, is there anything else you wanted to say, Billy?
Okay, let's rank the diehards, dude.
Rank them?
Yeah.
Oh, the first one's the best. The third one, second place. The second one, third place. Et cetera, et cetera. Fourth, then fifth is the worst. I think that's pretty uncontroversial, though. I think a lot of people feel that way.
Have you watched Live Free or Die Hard
Yeah,
recently?
I rewatched all the Die Hard movies a few months back. And yeah, it's okay. It's not one of the stronger ones, but and it's aged uh poorer than some of them. But yeah, I would say that it's still like fourth place out of five.
Okay, that that I would that was the only one I was a little iffy about. Um, but I am totally okay to follow your lead for that one. I was thinking I should rewatch that one,
It's fine.
but I would I would say 3 is definitely my second favorite too.
Yeah, three is just so good, and it has a direct connection to the first movie. So like, and then two is a little weaker, but like it's still it's a little bloated in some ways, and it's got a lot of like it's got a decent amount of filler, I think, but it's still a solid action movie. So I'd still like put it above uh the other two. And
Oh
five is
yeah.
pretty much unwatchable. It's so bad.
Have you seen
I
5?
I will be honest with you, I got about halfway through and it was just so dull and tedious that I turned it off. Like I was watching it with Leandra and it was just she agreed. It was like this is just so boring. Why would they do this?
I don't think you're the only one who felt that way about 5, so
Yeah.
that's definitely not a hot
Yeah.
take. All right. I think that was my I think that was my only thing I wanted to
Okay.
add.
All right. You heard it here first. The Die Hard movie is ranked in the most uncontroversial way possible.
Just a cheeky little ranking real
Yeah.
quick.
All right. I guess that'll do it. You've been enjoying politics and movies, and this is Mike and Billy signing off. See you later. Have a happy holiday.
Holiday is